So it's 11. We're starting on the dot. I know people are still walking in the door, as it were. But we'll get started because we've got a lot to share with you today. So first, let me introduce myself. I know you all didn't come here to hear me talk, but my name is Annette Kendall. I am the director. The transcript is interesting because of my accent. My name is Annette Kendall. I'm the director of the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the Trndsttrs College of Business. And we put on events like this where our whole focus is on inspiring and empowering more students to develop an entrepreneurial mindset and gain more control over their future. And so I'm super, super excited to have Jake here today to talk to you. So you can follow us on Instagram to get the heads up on our future webinars that we're doing. We always have super cool guests. So at CEI Mizzou is our handle on Instagram. So without further ado, I will introduce you to Jake. So Jake is the founder of Trndsttrs. He's 21 and he runs a Gen Z marketing agency. And I've just spent the last half hour chatting with him. And I'm so super excited to hear what he's going to say with you guys. He's going to cover all sorts of topics. He's going to keep it super real. And he's going to talk for a bit and then run a Q&A. So feel free to put your questions in the Q&A part. And let's get started. So Jake, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really thrilled to dive into it. I think this should be a great conversation. And like you said, I'm 21 years old. I should be graduating from college this year. So for all of the seniors in here, I'm right there with you, and this is kind of where I should be in the process. And congrats on everything, closing the year out. I'm really thrilled to dive into this conversation, and I really want to focus on exactly that: keeping it real, keeping it honest, because there are so many incredible entrepreneurs, and I'm sure you've had some in the past speak. There's plenty online that I think we all follow here and there. But I'm here to tell you it from the perspective of me being 21 years old. I'm in the same boat as a lot of individuals. And I want to start with exactly that. There's nothing about me that's inherently special or unique. There's not some secret that I know that others don't. And I'm still, while I've certainly made a lot of progress in the business world, I would still consider myself an idiot on 99.9% of all things. And so for anyone that sometimes feels that way or is often hard on themselves, like myself, can be at sometimes, I'm right there with you. And I think the best way to start would be kind of an intro into myself and some of the backstory, and then I'll dive into some key topics. And then, like you said, I would love to then dive into Q&A where I can really tailor and answer specific questions. So we'll dive into that in 15 or 20 minutes following this. And so everyone have your questions queued up, ready to go. But I think a good starting point. So right now, today, I'm the founder here at Trndsttrs. And what we are is a Gen Z agency helping brands understand and also reach Gen Z consumers. And we work equally with challenger and startup brands, as well as Fortune 500 brands that we worked with more extensively over the past year and will continue to work with moving forward, including brands like Coca Cola, McDonald's, L'Oreal, Denny's is a fun one, North Face. If you guys are all on TikTok, we do a lot on there, and we run the North Face account on TikTok. So lots of really fun, unique stuff. And we help brands, like I said, understand and reach Gen Z. And in terms of understanding, that's a lot of insights and research and consulting and strategy. And then in terms of actually reaching them, we have an engine of creatives, influencers, social media people that are, as you guys are scrolling through social media, the brand content you see, the ads you see, that's what we're doing for a lot of our clientele and tailoring that to you, because I'm sure you scroll oftentimes across a lot of brands or ads and you're like, this is very lame and clearly made by someone that doesn't understand me. So we're here in the market today to fix that. And what's interesting is, today I'm 21 years old, leading a team of 27 full-time individuals. in 3 countries, actually. We have a team here in the US, in Manila, Philippines, and then also in Bangladesh, India. So working at a global scale allows for 24/7 execution, which is awesome. But ultimately, this is something that it didn't happen overnight. And just 3 years ago, I was a freshman college student at the University of Kansas, which I know we got some rivalry. So I'm sure you're not stoked to hear that, but I didn't graduate, so it's okay. It's not like I'm a Kansas alum or anything. I've no religious tie necessarily to the university. And where I was at that point, I was always interested in entrepreneurship. I was exploring it in high school, always starting businesses left and right, seeing what I can do. And ultimately, I finally found kind of some traction in Snapchat. So I had a Snapchat media brand, and we had thousands of followers that followed me and my friends just doing really dumb things. And this was Snapchat 2016, pre DJ Khaled years, before it really took off. And then small businesses in the area started paying us to promote. And when I say promote, I'm not talking about like the business we do now. I'm talking like $100, $200, $300. But at the time, I'm 17 years old. I'm like, $300 just to post on Snapchat? That's the coolest thing I've ever heard. Let's do it. That's when I got introduced to the marketing and advertising space. From there, I somehow landed a meeting with Noodles and Company, and I was prepared to consult on Snapchat. That was my first week now on campus at KU as a freshman. Syllabus week, thank God. So I got to spend all that time really just working on, go to some classes here and there, just understand what's going on, but really work on that pitch deck. So I come into the meeting, I'm prepared to talk about Snapchat. Within about 2 minutes, I quickly realized they could care less about Snapchat. And what they really wanted to understand was Gen Z. And that was the moment where it kind of hit me, wait a second, there's something bigger here. I don't know what it is, but there's something bigger here, and I want to work towards it. Well, then 3 weeks later was the most transformational day in my life thus far, where after a long night out in a fraternity, Sigma Chi at KU, so any fellow SIGs out there, pleasure to have you on today. And at 3 a.m. I wake up in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom, and a fraternity bathroom is not a very cleanly place. And so I hit my chin on a marble counter, and my jaw shatters in 7 places. Now, of all the bones to break in your body, I would recommend probably skull number 1 is like the worst, because that's, quite important. But the jaw's got to be up there in terms of number 2, because it turns out they're going to put a cast on whatever you break. And if that cast is your face, you're not going to be able to talk or eat for a period of like 3 to 4 months. Your face might never look the same. You might have a crooked jaw like me, which I always love. I have some interesting party tricks around there. So then, that really put a halt in my semester, and I was still able to finish up the semester there. But here I am now in the hospital going through surgeries, sitting at home. I also come down with a sickness, which makes it incredibly difficult while I'm in the hospital. And I'm just going through just the worst experience of my life. I hate hospitals. I'm scared of needles. Like I can't stand it. And while I'm there, I'm being told by the doctors that, hey, you might not be able to physically eat food ever again. You might have to go liquid. You might not, your face might not come back the same at all. It might be crooked forever, as even to this day, it is a little bit, but we're in a good spot. Thankfully, they did a good job. And it was at that moment where I really transitioned and said, you know what, I want to take advantage of this opportunity. And I spent the next 30 days while recovering at home to build up this business plan. And then I went out and found a potential client and pitched them for our services, of which I said I would do for free because I wanted to prove it. And I won my first ever client. Granted, it was for free, so I don't know if you count that. Won my first ever client while my jaw was wired shut, and I was having to speak like this, which is very difficult in a pitch, as you might see. And then obviously my face was the size of a balloon. So very interesting stuff there. So that's ultimately the origin story. And then, later on that summer, I went full-time with the business, and within 2 months, we had some good PR, news stories started bringing us in, and we had clients that were paying us, and I was able to sustain and then ultimately leave school and go full-time with the business. And that was that transitional moment for me. And I think more importantly, obviously that covers kind of my background and story, but I want to chat on this new era of entrepreneurship we're entering in, of which I consider what we do as a company kind of a good example of that, but I think it becomes much bigger. And this is a new era of entrepreneurship that will be written and executed by us collectively, all of the Gen Z individuals in this room. The reason being, the barriers to entry have dissolved. Anyone nowadays can go start drop shipping product on the other side of the planet in terms of where they're getting it and start selling it and create a brand accordingly. Anyone now can go on Shopify and start selling merchandise overnight. Anyone can become a fitness influencer. And we're seeing this across the board. When you have Addison Rae launching Item Beauty, and she's able to directly compete in the cosmetic space against L'Oreal, P&G, and Unilever, some of the biggest billion-dollar brands in the world. Then you have Mr. Beast launching Mr. Beast burgers utilizing cloud kitchens, able to compete with McDonald's, Wendy's, and Burger King at the biggest scale, selling 1 million burgers within its first month. Then you have Logan Paul fighting Floyd Mayweather, dropping NFTs and making $5 million overnight, selling NFTs through cryptocurrency. What we have is this new era of entrepreneurship and chaos. Chaos created by a lot of things, but ultimately derived from the internet and the opportunities that exist accordingly. And I can tell you definitively, there's more opportunity today than ever before in history. The reality is, it is easier to start a business, to make money, to start a side hustle, to build a media brand. It is easier to do that today. Yes, we have a million things going on. Yes, we have COVID. Yes, there's global problems. Yes, there's political problems. Yes, maybe we end up having inflation problems in the US, or who knows what's going to happen with the Fed. Yeah, the stock market's been down for the past 2 weeks. Yeah, your parents don't want you to start this business. They want you to go get a corporate job. Yeah, your friends don't support you. Yeah, your significant other is kind of causing some problems in your life and doesn't want you to do it. I understand all the problems that we have today, but there's no denying that there's more opportunity that exists in the market today than ever before, and it's on us to take advantage of those. But in terms of how we go about it, the current methodology and approach appears flawed. There's this idea, and I always felt this way when I was starting out and trying to get to the next level and grow, that there must be some secret, there must be some list, there must be something that exists out there that these individuals doing it know that I don't know. When I was, once a student in an entrepreneurship event, that's all I was thinking the whole time. What does this guy or gal know that I don't? And then as I got started into it, connecting with mentors and networking and learning from them, I quickly realized there is no secret, and that these people who were doing exactly what I wanted to one day do didn't know anything more than me that was inherent to them. They were just out doing it, and they were leveraging their inherent strengths to get there. I think inversely, you have a different problem that also exists. The reality is entrepreneurship is hot. Like over the past decade and really just the past 2 years, it seems that entrepreneurship is like the coolest thing ever. Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. 56% of all Gen Z individuals want to be an entrepreneur within the next decade. And I love that, because I think we are creating this new creator economy, and people can create side hustles and earn income in interesting, unique ways and change the corporate 9-to-5 job structure, which I think is a win-win for everyone. But what comes with that is this glamorous vision of entrepreneurship, that entrepreneurship is this incredible thing where you don't have a boss, you pick your own schedule, you do whatever you want. The reality is the opposite is true. I have more bosses today than I've ever had in my life when I was interning at Cerner. I had more freedom to do what I wanted when I was an intern at Cerner and I was working at an actual company than I do now today. Because yes, I certainly have freedom of decision-making and direction, but now I answer to all of our clients and customers. I answer to all of the team members we employ. I answer to all of my mentors and advisors that sit on the board of our company. And it's also one of those things where, yes, I could wake up on a Friday and do nothing, but the business is not going to sustain itself if I'm to do that. And so I think there is this idea, this falsehood, that entrepreneurship is so glamorous when in reality it's the opposite, and it's incredibly difficult. And I can tell you firsthand, it's the most difficult thing ever. I'm 21. I feel like I'm 49. And I just shaved my head 2.5 weeks ago. I don't know why. Maybe I was stressed out and just wanted to do that. I'm surprised it's not growing back as gray, or I'm surprised I still have hair from all the things I've been through. But I think one of the biggest problems is that so many individuals want the lifestyle of an entrepreneur, and they see that entrepreneurship or the people on Instagram flexing with cool cars and cool guys or girls and at nightclubs and doing all those things. Those aren't real entrepreneurs. Those aren't real people. Those are people selling you courses or other BS that ultimately isn't going to actually help you. And it's not to say that all of those are falsehoods, but That's a 0.00001% of all entrepreneurs on the planet. And yeah, certainly you could work your way to get there, but if we want to be practical and real, it's likely not going to happen. The other thing I often hear from a lot of students is around education. Question I often get is, hey, Jake, I want to start this business. How do I go about dropping out? How do I make that happen? And, hey, I want to start this business, but I need to drop out first. And the educational system is flawed, Jake, and all this stuff. And look, I understand. And I think there's improvements to be made in the current educational system. But I also think we need to do the best we can with what we got. And it isn't the job of the university to turn you into Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg. If that were the case, then we'd have a lot more Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, and then it'd be a much more competitive market. It is on you, the individual, to use the tools and resources you have and make the most of what you do have. The other thing is being practical and real. And I see far too often young entrepreneurs trying to become the next Mark Zuckerberg. They want to start, a company doing this crazy thing. It's Uber, but for this. It's Tinder, but for this. It's Facebook, but for this. And while certainly the concept does matter a little bit at the end of the day, it's one of those things where we have entrepreneurs going out there and trying to start companies, and they're trying to make millions of dollars before they've made $1, before they made $1,000, before they made $10,000. So many are writing their goals for this year, financial goals. They talk about how when they're maybe 30, they want to have $100 million in their bank account. But yet today, they don't have the micro steps to actually get there. If your goal is to one day be a billionaire, to be a millionaire, be whatever you want to be in the entrepreneurship, be one of the best, you need to break down the micro steps and step by step in the process that's going to get you there, and focus on that today. So many are focused on trying to go IPO into a $50 billion company before they've even made $10,000 as a company. So I think focusing on the specifics and the details, and understanding that entrepreneurship is not just raising money and going to the market and IPOing and making a ton of money behind it. Yeah, that happens, but it only happens for the best of the best companies on the planet. And when it comes to actually making that happen, I think the biggest piece of advice that I've followed religiously is leveraging your inherent strengths. I understand what I'm bad at. I also understand what I'm really good at. I'm a great communicator. I'm also Gen Z. You'll notice I come in here today, I mentioned our company. We're a Gen Z agency. We help brands understand and reach Gen Z. Everyone we employ a few fringe millennials, 26 and 28. Everyone else is between the age of 18 and 25. And so that's what we do as a company, because who is better to understand them than us? Our head of social media is a massive influencer on TikTok. Our head of influencer marketing is a big influencer. You go down the line, and when you look at our company profile, we're built to do what we actually do for clients, and that's what we do best. And so many, I think, try to go out and try to be something they're not. They try to be a visionary. They try to be a tech genius. They try to be a CTO. They try to be a salesperson, when maybe those aren't your inherent strengths. One of the things we've always done is lean into those inherent strengths. I understand that I am a Gen Z individual. What that means is when I go into a boardroom, when I pitch Coca Cola, I show up wearing exactly this. I'm wearing a backwards hat. I'm wearing a hoodie. Sometimes I wear a pink little tie-dye, hype house hoodie, like all this crazy stuff, because I want to keep it real with clientele. I want them to understand who we are, and I don't want to sell to the unsellable, which brings me to one of my last points. And then I'd love to dive into Q&A, which is the network around you and who you rely on for advice and insight to start your business. So many go to me and they ask for my opinion on their business. And while I can give insight, while Annette can give insight, while many more can give insight and ideas, it's not on us to determine the validity of your business. It is not on anyone to do that outside of your potential customer and client base. And so that's who you need to be listening to. When I was at the University of Kansas, I applied to the Entrepreneurship Accelerator program. I got denied, but I didn't take that no for an answer. I went out and did it because I had yeses from actual businesses that would be clientele. And that's all I needed. I got advice from family, from friends. They didn't believe in the model. I didn't need them to believe in the model because I knew it, I saw it, and my customers and clients were saying yes. And that's ultimately what matters most, is ensuring that you go out there and you listen to the advice of those that matter, which is ultimately going to be your end clientele and customer base. And then I think the final thing, and then I'd love to ultimately dive into Q&A, is doing whatever it takes to win and not making it glamorous. No different than entrepreneurship being overrated. I think far too many want to take the title of founder and CEO and hire people underneath them. And now all of a sudden I sit on a pedestal and I don't go do the dirty work and I don't get my hands dirty. And that's something that will never change. I will have to be in the weeds for our business to continue growing. If I don't show up on a weekday because I want to go on vacation somewhere, then our business is going to suffer because of that. And I can't do that. And I can't let my team down. And one of the best examples of this that really shows, a lot of these things in action, the chaos, the barriers to entry being dissolved, and doing whatever it takes to win, is how we signed McDonald's. So and this isn't just like a McDonald's location, this is corporate McDonald's, one of the biggest brands in the world. Their advertising spend is billions of dollars a year, incredible clientele that we still work with to today. That was an incredible story where I built a relationship thanks to my personal brand on LinkedIn, where I produce content, I share content. That's probably likely how we got connected here in the first place. From there, what I did was I pioneered a relationship with someone inside the company and maintain that relationship. And I didn't go in trying to sell McDonald's, because you're not going to sell a big client of that nature, and no different than if it's a big customer, but I just built a relationship. And then funny enough, Roddy Ricch drops an album, and what would have been December 2019, his box album, I think is Please Excuse Me for Being Antisocial. Really good album, by the way, which I was always a big Roddy Ricch fan. So I texted to my buddy working at McDonald's and I say, hey man, this is an awesome fire playlist. Like, definitely check it out. He then tells me about some of the opportunities that exist at the company and how we should look to work together. And that's how we then cultivated the relationship. Well, then a few months later, zero traction was made because getting a big corporate company to work with you is incredibly difficult. And I finally said, okay, I'm going to bring this one to life. I'm going to make this happen. I text him and I tell him, I'm going to be in Chicago Thursday and Friday. We're meeting with another client, would love to meet with you. That wasn't true. I wasn't going to be in Chicago. That was kind of a white lie, but one that led to something great. He then tells me, sure, come by the global HQ. I'll try to get you a meeting with my boss. Well, then Thursday comes around. It's 5 a.m. We're about to drive to Chicago, and there's an absolute snowstorm. And we then drive for 12 hours in a snowstorm in my buddy's Camry, of which the brakes hardly worked. It was one of the more dangerous moments of my life. Didn't know we were going to make it out, but we were going to do anything to make it to that meeting. I'm not advising anyone go do that, by the way. I'm just sharing the example. From there, we go meet with them, and I happened just to bump into their chief marketing officer. We cultivated a relationship, and 2 months later, they're a client, and still to this day, we work with them. And I think that's an incredible example of a couple different things. And I'll also make a note of, we show up to that meeting, and it was 4 of us on the team at Trndsttrs. We only had 6 employees at the time. This was a little over a year ago. And we didn't show up in suits. We didn't show up trying to pretend what we didn't know. We leveraged our strengths. We went in and said, this is Gen Z. This is how we can potentially work together. And I wore probably the same outfit then that I'm wearing right now. And we were real and we were honest, and they loved and appreciated that. And your potential customers and clienteles of any potential business are going to love that as well. And so I think that really describes kind of the good state of entrepreneurship. There's incredible opportunity, and I really can't wait to see more Gen Z individuals graduate or even prior to graduating, start getting into entrepreneurship, because there is so much opportunity and the potential is ultimately limitless. And I think now would be a good time. I could probably talk for hours on anything, marketing strategy, you name it. But now perhaps we can dive into Q&A.
Okay, thanks, Jake. So I'm pretty hyped for a Friday morning already, right? Like, so much energy happening here. So if you have a question, use the Q&A for your question, not the chat. So put it in the Q&A. I just want to ask just quickly, okay, so you talked about being, when you're in college, leveraging those resources and things like that. So what is one thing that our students could do after they get off this call that you would recommend they do and like one concrete practical tip for college?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to start doing it and focus on only 2 things. Focus on number 1, revenue, and number 2, brand. You might not be able to sell potential customers or clients right away. If that's the case, then the next best thing you can do is build brand, and ideally you can do both. So, for me, what that was when I was in college, I didn't have so much time to work on the business. I didn't know how to sign clients. I didn't have any experience doing a lot of that. And there was no help self or book or guide that was going to teach me exactly how that would work. So one of the things I did is I just started pitching and seeing where it would go and not being afraid of hearing no, because what you have to realize is you have to take the approach of a learner and always remain curious and willing to learn. That's really the best way. If you go into it and you have expectation for yourself to accomplish X, Y, and Z, you're going to set yourself up for a very bad position and poor position. I think what you should do instead is take the approach of a learner and look to go learn from others and see what the model looks like in real life. But that's what I would say is go start. If you're a graphic designer and you want to start a little design shop, go start pitching businesses on that. You don't need to have 1 million employees. You don't need to have, a massive portfolio. Just start doing it. And maybe for your first few clients, you do it 100% for free. Or maybe if you want to start, you want to finally start your podcast or your fitness page on Instagram, I would recommend just start doing it. Don't wait for the equipment to arrive for the podcast. Don't wait till you have a better camera so you can have better quality for your Instagram fit pictures, so your abs look a little bit more shredded on this 4K camera instead of your iPhone. So many are trying to overdo it instead of just keeping it simple and doing what they can with what they have.
All right. Thanks, Jake. So we've got a question here in the question. So Vivek, what's up, Vivek? I'm super happy to see you here. So Vivek says, how will blockchain and cryptocurrencies influence how companies will have to market towards Gen Z?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it becomes a larger question because really the question we should be asking is how do blockchain and cryptocurrencies allow for really a destabilization and reliance on the US dollar, on how we transact, a lot of interesting things. One of the things that you can look at in history, like not necessarily an example of this, but kind of a result of it, look up how Pepsi became the 5th largest Navy fleet in the world. And the reason that happened is because during the Cold War era, we wanted to kind of amend relations with Russia. And so we introduced Pepsi to the market there. They somehow won that contract through, traditional Russian oligarchy systems. And then what happened, though, was the Russian currency wasn't going to be available or reliable for Pepsi to take. So instead, they would trade military gear and resell that back to the U.S. And so that's how we acquired a lot of interesting military equipment. And there was a point in time where Pepsi had their own Navy fleet. And I think that's an example of not where it goes, but of the potential where what happens when businesses and brands start allowing for payment through cryptocurrency. The Dallas Mavericks just released that they would now accept Dogecoin as a payment, which who would have thought that would have been the case even years ago. And then I think on the note of NFTs, because I saw that as kind of an additional caveat there, NFTs are a massive game changer. What's crazy is over the past 200 years, the best investment class of any asset was actually fine art of all things. And NFTs now allow for that in the digital landscape. So I think no different than what you saw with Wall Street Bets and GameStop and many more. I think the power of retail traders and Gen Z is immense. And I think it's on us to rely and leverage these. So I think as companies integrate into blockchain and cryptocurrency, we will see less of a reliance on maybe government institutions and organizations and more of just a natural free market open approach, which I think even creates then more opportunities beyond what anything exists today. But I wish I had a crystal ball. I would love to tell you what that looks like, but it's going to be interesting.
All right. So I love this question. Someone anonymous, but yeah, how much money did you start the business with?
That's a great question. In reality, I started the business with no money. You can go out, you can buy an LLC online, but I would recommend don't go buy an LLC until you first sell your first customer or client, because you really don't need to. Until you make money, you don't need to be a registered LLC, because at that point, you're just blowing $200 on an LLC, of which until you actually drive revenue to it, you don't have any taxable income coming from that. So I started it with zero money. One of the things I did though early on, I hired all my friends to work with me so they could get experience and on sweat equity. And that worked out really well because I couldn't afford to hire employees. I'd hire kind of young creators who would be able to get experience, build a portfolio. So I started with no money, but that summer when I really went hard into the company, there were times where I wanted to bring someone on, or I wanted to pay for this or do this thing or get this equipment. I would literally mow lawns on the weekend. Despite me running my business and having some clients, I didn't have enough clients to fund that. So I would mow lawns on the weekends to make a quick $100, $200, $300 like I used to do when I was 14, 15 years old. Now I am at like 18, 19 doing it. And I would mow lawns on the weekend to make extra money to fund stuff. So yeah, you got to be scrappy. You don't need money to get started. And then I saw the PS, do you listen to podcasts? Yes, I listened to quite a few. Gary Vee's got a great one. Morning Brew has a great one. Business Casual. There's a lot of others as well. And then we also have our own podcast, the Trendsetters podcast. We welcome on some of the biggest CMOs in the world, CMOs of Coke, North Face, IBM. We have NASA coming on soon. So we have some crazy stuff. So definitely check out our Trendsetters podcast sometime.
That's super cool. And yeah, I love the whole getting scrappy, mowing lawns so you can pay your employees. That's what it takes, right? Like we are getting super real here about entrepreneurship. It's not glamorous. Carsten Short. Hey, Carsten. So yeah, great question. How do you generate new ideas? Do they just come to you in the shower, or what's up with, like, how does it happen?
Yeah, this is a great question. And there's a lot of scientific research into this actually, in terms of new idea generation. I think two things. Number one, information. Number two, consistency. Information coming from books, articles. I'm always reading all the time, looking into the newest and latest and greatest, all the trends, you name it. The second thing is consistency. So many think that creativity is this black box or something that is behind the curtain that you can't see and it's just magical. There's some incredible quotes around this, but one quote that stands out to me is how it's from actually a famous director and writer, I forget the name, but he pretty much says, he's asked, how do you get your new creative ideas for writing and directing? And he goes, well, it's crazy. Every morning I grab a cup of coffee, I drink my water, I do my workout, and I hit my desk at 9 a.m. And for whatever reason, whenever I hit my desk at 9 a.m. every morning during a work day and work throughout the day, the ideas come to me. And that's a really good example of how creativity and idea generation is all about consistency, putting in the effort, trying to drive it. I would say the biggest thing is don't force ideas. Don't think it's going to come through a work session or anything of that nature. Let it come to you and let it, like it did for me with the whole Gen Z model, let it hit you in the face and just explore, stay curious, question everything. And that's probably the best way to generate ideas.
On the subject of books, Jake, book recommendation?
Yeah, so I have a top 5 here, and I'm actually working on my own that'll be released in October. So I'll be sure to promote that to the Mizzou org and such. But number one, I think, is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. That is a book that will put your life in a great spot. That's a great one. Second is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, really on mindset, meditation, the connection towards that. The subconscious brain is far more powerful than any of us could ever imagine or understand. And if you can empower that, it's going to help you out. And then 3, I would say Good to Great by Jim Collins, defining how companies transition from good to great. What are those elements? And then kind of 4 and 5, anything by Ryan Holiday around stoicism. He's a really great author, has some really great books. Obstacles the Way is one of my favorites. And then Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius is a big Stoic philosopher. I think Stoicism is an incredible, as we see religion decline with younger generations and the practice of religion being less and less, which I can certainly relate to as a Catholic kid growing up and now still involved, but less than I ever was. Stoicism is a philosophical practice that I think would help so many individuals out, especially ones that maybe let their emotions guide their life. If you can understand how to manage your emotions, you become a very powerful human being.
Awesome. God, I said this to Jake, you guys, I said this to Jake when we were chatting before, like, how cool would it be to have Jake as your professor, right? Like, we're learning so much, so much. You're obviously a fierce consumer of education and knowledge. So even though, dropped out of college for sure, but that doesn't mean the learning stops. So Aiden's got this question here. Jake, what are your ideals as a young entrepreneur? How many hours do you work a week? Congrats on McDonald's.
Yeah, Aiden, that's a great question. My ideals as a young entrepreneur, I don't know if I have specific ideals or principles that I follow. What I will say is I kind of let those develop over time naturally. I don't like predefining or premeditating on those. Stoicism is a philosophical practice I follow quite a bit because I think that's incredibly helpful, being mindful and things of that nature. And then in terms of the hours that get put in, nowadays anywhere from like 60 to 70. What's funny is my first 2 years in entrepreneurship, I used to work 12 hours a day for 6 days a week, and then an additional 6 hours on Sunday. So somewhere in like the 80, 90, 100 range is what I was working, because I was a big believer, and this is something Elon Musk talks about, but the reality is if you put in 40 hours a week and I put in 80 hours a week, well, in the same year, I'm going to, at the bare minimum, double where you can go. And if you believe in the flywheel effect and acceleration, that really starts to accelerate itself. So I'm a big believer of putting in the time, the effort, the energy, but also within that, not wasting my time on things that don't matter. Even to this day, we spend as a company very little time in meetings with one another. We like to just get our hands dirty, get the work done. We communicate with agility. We don't try to make everything perfect. Not every piece of content we post for a client or ourselves has to be perfect. And we don't let perfection bog us down. We're more than happy to push it out if it's good enough. And I'm okay with maybe a team member's work if it's 80% of what I could do. So that's kind of my approach. And maybe that's kind of my ideals. And then I also saw from Lindsay, Nicholas, where are you living now? And do you want to move to other places in your career? It's a great question. Right now I'm in downtown Kansas City. I love it here. I grew up in South OP, then moved downtown as soon as the business started taking off. I think this is overrated in today's world because of the remote nature of business. But what I will say is in about a month or two, I will be heading to LA. Oddly enough, everyone's exodusing and I see it as the perfect time for us to get in. But I'll be going there where we can be more connected with influencers, my mentors and advisors, and more of the business org. But I don't think your location of your company actually matters, especially in today's world, because 0 of our clients are actually based in Kansas City. They're all across the US and the world.
On that subject of mentors, Jake, there's a few questions here just going through about who are your mentors? Who do you look up to?
Yeah, so I think the practical relationship of having a mentor is overrated and overplayed sometimes. There's this idea that like you have to have many mentors and chat with them all the time in order to grow. I've only had one mentor at a time forever. And so I had my first mentor. Now I have kind of my second mentor. So my mentor, he's a venture capitalist out in LA. And he's in some incredible networks and awesome relationship. He has more connections with the world than anyone I've ever met. Most infamously, he's done some crazy stuff, but most infamously, he actually introduced, for those that don't know, Elon Musk did not start Tesla. Someone else did. He actually introduced Elon Musk to Tesla, and he built that relationship. And then if you guys have seen the story of Elon Musk, when he made all that money from PayPal, but put it into his businesses and had to take a loan to live somewhere. A lot of people say like he lived at the office, lived at the gym. That's actually not true. He had a house in Santa Monica. My mentor and their neighbors, they would play poker every other night and kind of hang out, and they actually had to pay his mortgage. But that was an investment in him, and it panned out because now him and Bezos are always flipping for the most rich person on the planet. So that's kind of my mentor. And it's one of those things where I don't waste time with my mentor asking him questions that I should be able to figure out or he might not know, but more so from a macro vision, making sure that I'm connected. I think for entrepreneurs that are practical and real, you need to put on the blinders and just focus on what's ahead. And so having a mentor can be someone in the press box that's seeing where you're actually going, making sure you're not going to go off a cliff, and making sure you're heading in the right direction.
Thanks for all that insight about Elon Musk.
Yes,
some of those.
Know that.
Yeah, that's super cool. How did you heard that's from your mentors? You said, yeah, right.
Correct. Yeah, some crazy stories too.
Yeah, I bet. So I'm skipping down a little bit because I think this question here from somebody anonymous is really relevant for a lot of students. As a brand new small business owner, I often struggle accepting help from my friends or asking for help when I need it. Have you ever experienced this? How do you overcome it? Yeah, good question.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. And it's important that you shouldn't accept help from anyone. And if you do, I would make sure it's structured and organized and very clear, especially with friends, because things can get hairy and tricky, as I've certainly experienced firsthand. But I think it's one of those things where you need to understand what you're not the best in the world at and work with people who might be or can help you in those arenas. I'm fortunate enough to have a COO that is like very polar opposite of me. I'm like super talkative, crazy idea, visionary guy. He's more introverted, operational, gets the work done and processes, systems, you name it, planning. So, that was my first hire when I really took things big with Trendsetters, because he had those complementary skill sets that I just didn't have. So I think finding those, but in terms of how you overcome it, I think detaching ego maybe a little bit is helpful. Understanding that while certainly you're the biggest driver of your business, you are not your business, and you are so much more than that as a person. And this is just, one part of your life and your life stage. Disconnecting from it emotionally is really important. So I would say exactly that. Like, I think you need to detach from the ego that might be associated, and also understand when you do get help that someone doing something at even 50% the level you would, well, as long as it gets done, you weren't going to be able to probably do it anyway. So it's better done than done not perfectly. And I think that's also on the note of chasing perfection, which doesn't ever exist. Be okay with settling for less than perfect.
Yeah, I think some of it's about this fear of rejection, right? I don't want to ask my friends to help in case they say no. And it's the same with asking mentors, would you mentor me? Just in case they say no. Mm-hmm. So yeah. How is that? Have you ever been told no?
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, time and time again, we were told no by potential clients, by people who thought our business model was stupid. When I was starting out in Kansas City, I got a lot of flack and hate from a lot of the big wig entrepreneurs and business people here, which now it's funny when I have conversations with them and the head of economic development here in Kansas City, and we talk about those people because he wants me to get them in touch. But yeah, I mean, it's fascinating stuff. I think the biggest thing is, like I said, only valuing the opinion of your potential customers and clientele, and only valuing your opinion as well. I think not letting the opinions of others affect you in any way, let alone personally, but definitely in the business world, is really vital. I can sit here and say, my company's doing this, this, and this, and you should listen to me. But the reality is, if you ask me a question relevant to your business, even if I give you an answer that you don't want to hear, that's not necessarily the right answer. And how am I to know? I don't know all the details of your life nor your company. So I think that's one of the biggest things there is being okay with hearing no.
Yeah, being okay with it. So Christian asks a good question. Do you have more than one stream of income, or is it just all fully Trendstttrs? Sorry.
Yeah, it's fully Trendsetters. This is something that I hear often, like this idea of passive income and other unique stuff. I don't have anything against it, but I'm all in on my company, and that's what I believe in, and that's what I want to take to the moon and take to the next level. So I spend very little time, maybe I'll put money into a Roth IRA, but outside of that, I'm not going to waste my time trying to dive in and delve into other things. I want to focus 100% of my efforts all the time on what I can be the best in the world at. And yeah, I could go buy some rental properties. I could go, drop ship product. I could go build this passive income business, but that's not what I want to do. And I think that's another important thing, especially when it comes to making money. This kind of ties in with ego, but certainly everything we do as a company, like our company has to make money at the end of the day, make revenue and make profit after expenses, right? And that's really underrated. But it's one of those things where I shouldn't be chasing money. I should be chasing the bigger vision for the company and where we want to go. And so I refuse to chase money. If we don't want to work with a client, even if they're going to pay us a lot, we're going to drop the contract with that client. If there's a potential client for us, but it's not what we do best, even though there might be money there, I'm going to say no, because you have to be willing to say no to money. And as you get into entrepreneurship, your biggest struggle will be knowing when to say no to opportunities. I know that I could probably start doing Davey Day Trader, getting into Buzz right now. I think that's like the hottest like ETF now, and find ways to make unique money. And I think that's interesting, but I'm not passionate about it. I really don't care. And I don't want to spend all day looking at blips on the stock market, or drop shipping product, or dealing with rental properties and all that stuff. So I want to do what I'm passionate about, what I love doing, and make money from that. And if it's outside of that, I could care less about the money.
I love this. Okay, so Josiah's got a question, and this is a really good question. What advice do you have for us that are about to graduate and go into the workforce but aren't interested in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, first of all, I love that because you haven't been taken by the I guess the glamour of entrepreneurship. So I love hearing that. I think the biggest thing is ensure that, like, when it comes to taking whatever job you end up taking, take the job where two things are going to happen. One, you're going to learn the most, and two, you're going to get the most opportunity to grow in. Do not take the job that just pays the most or has the biggest brand title, or, you know, your uncle knows the manager there, so it's going to be easy for you. Like, do not do that. Put yourself in a position to succeed and learn. Let me tell you this firsthand. This is something I always tell young individuals working in companies. There is no amount of money you are going to make today at 22, 23, whatever years old, in your 20s, in your 30s, that if you were to invest that time into making that money into learning, you can't out earn later on. The most important thing for all the young people here today is to focus on education, because you could go out, get a job, say even you're making $1 million a year for the next 10 years. You know, a lot of that's going to taxes. So really it's only about 500, 400K, 600K, whatever. You know, yeah, that's a lot of money and that's awesome. And you're going to be set for retirement, but you could learn some things that are going to put you in a much better position to make money. So do not make a financial decision, go where you're going to learn the most. And then I would say when you get into that role, go above and beyond and do the things that aren't asked of you. It is not like, you know, a large part of a job will be like a school system where you have a syllabus, you know what you have to do day to day, but there's a large part of it that doesn't. Understand, if it's a smaller company or a bigger company, regardless, understand what are the actual economics behind this business. How could I support that? How could I go above and beyond in this role? And, you know, you can play the politics, but don't rely on playing the politics, being nice to people, being communicative, you name it. Just do the work, do the hustle, do the extra stuff, and don't be afraid to share your ideas and make sure you get a seat at the table. And understand that you might not know everything about that business, but you being a young person, you do have incredible insight into the future that they simply won't. You're going to understand more about NFTs and social media than they will. So advise on that. Even if you're not on the social media team, you know, you might be in the finance department, give advice to the social media team, do everything you can to provide value and go above and beyond.
That's great advice. You know, I'm sitting here listening to you talk, Jake, and I'm just like, I just want to create a course that every week you just listen to your podcasts. And that's the syllabus.
I think people will get sick of my voice really quickly.
Yeah, it could be. They get sick of mine. They get sick of my voice as well too, though.
Do some
hey,
voice
so
voice.
James West, my man. This question: how important has proper business communication been, such as using perfect grammar and writing mechanics when communicating with potential clients?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the biggest things, it's less to do with business or professional communication. It's more about tailoring communication to what they're saying. This is especially the case in complicated B2B deals like what we do, where different companies call different things. And you need to, so I would say tailoring the messaging to what your audience is and how they speak and the lingo accordingly. We certainly, and you can obviously hear me speaking, I use a lot of big words, a lot of jargon, a lot of business terms, but we like to keep it real. We like to keep it honest. We don't, try to do that, but we certainly tailor it. So it's less about business communication and more about tailoring it to your end audience, being able to speak the lingo. Because, a CEO of a small business in, Jackson, Missouri, that guy or gal is going to speak a little bit differently than someone from New York, even who might be 30 years old, the head of social media at a big company. And so it's more about tailoring it to your end audience and meeting their lingo accordingly. And you don't have to pretend to be something you're not, but it's understanding the words, the phrases, the lingo they're using, and then ensuring that you're kind of adjusting your communication style to fit that.
All right, so I'm scanning up the top again to the questions, and Drew Cole's got, what is it? Yeah, what is your hit list? Companies that you want to work with in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. I can share a little bit, but we want to continue working with Fortune brands that are doing incredible things, working at the biggest level. I can't share the specific ones, but, your big automotive brands, maybe like a Nissan, maybe continue to work with L'Oreal on some things. H&M's one that we really want to work with. Brands in that category. And then we also want to work with a lot of challenger and startup brands trying to change the world, whether that's in sustainability, innovation, AI, blockchain, crypto, brands that really have a purpose that goes beyond. Those are really the companies we want to work with. But, I'm one of those things where I'll kind of take what we can get and we'll do what we can as an agency, because that's one of the things where even though we are where we are today, it's something I can't be picky about, but McDonald's is a dream client. I want to continue working with them, and I want to launch something bigger than Travis Scott. That's my goal for this year. We gotta beat Travis Scott in that campaign.
So this question, and you can choose to not answer this if you don't want to, given this is being recorded, but is there a brand that you think really needs your help?
Oh yeah. So there's a lot. It's all of your CPG brands that are quite big. So think about a brand like Coca Cola. Well, the way that, and I'll kind of explain why, because this shows you the shift that's happening. I mentioned this before, but I want everyone to understand the impact of what this really means. Think about a brand like Coca Cola. They sell things on a shelf, likely. People don't buy beverages over the internet often. They sell a line of products. It's not just Coke. They own Sprite, they own Fanta, they own believe Dasani water, they own Tropicana, they own a lot of stuff. So when you go to the grocery store, the gas station, you name it, the vending machine, and look at it, what are the products you see there? You see Coke products, you see Pepsi products, you see a few alternatives, maybe Dr. Pepper, which is Dr. Pepper, Keurig, Snapple, all in the same company. So you see a lot of these big holding companies, and you only have limited options for those. What we're seeing happen is the continued barriers that are being dissolved. And what that means is, what is preventing Mr. Beast? He just launched a burger chain. Why can't he launch his own beverage? When grocery shopping moves online and becomes 100%, we no longer shop in stores, we now order it online, which has risen like crazy thanks to COVID. When that becomes the case, it's no longer a competition over shelf space. It's a competition over the internet and branding and marketing. And so anyone can go in and compete with those brands. And I'm not going to sit here and say that, a big influencer or big startup company can make a sustainable version of Coca-Cola and take Coca-Cola down. But like thousands of those happening at the same time can trickle off all of those small market shares and make things really difficult for a Coca-Cola and Pepsi. So brands that are now incumbents, leaders, a North Face, a Coca-Cola, Nissan, GM, like you name it, those are brands that I think could really use our support and help.
All right, so we got a couple of minutes for a couple more questions. So, what's been the most rewarding part of all this? Leaving college, not putting in your typical 9 to 5, Yeah,
I would say the most rewarding part has been getting the chance to give opportunities to the people that we bring on. It's crazy. We will hire kids off the street that are 23, 21, 19. And they walk in, and their first day, I pull them into a meeting with a big brand, and they find themselves talking to a senior executive that they would have never spoken to outside of that. And they walk in, and day one, they're expected to be able to compete at that level. And we give them the opportunity to, afford to live in a nicer place and to afford to follow their passion, because these are things that people are passionate about. We hired one guy who formerly worked at UPS. Another thing for our global team, the team we have in the Philippines, this is like money that they're using to feed their families. We have a couple individuals in the Philippines, 24 and 25. They have a 2-year-old kid. And so we actually employ both the husband and wife. They work in separate departments, funny enough. And so 100% of their household income comes from our company. And it's just crazy to think, I go to bed at night, and when I really need that extra motivation, that's what I think about, how there's a kid being fed right now in another country, all because of, me starting this company and continuing to grow it. And it's pretty motivating, and it makes you want to hustle and continue growing things when you realize that you are legitimately changing the lives of these very young adults who will go on to do incredible things. So that's what inspires me most and most rewarding by far.
And that's the thing that will keep you going, right? That's the thing that it gives you energy to get through the grind, right?
Yeah.
So I've seen this play out a little bit, or quite a lot actually. So this is a good question. Have you noticed your relationships with friends and family changing at all since becoming an entrepreneur? I guess the question is, it's becoming so big, right? And what does this look like? Do you get the whole, well, it's all right for you, but they weren't there when you were, working 100 hours and continue to and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So the family one's interesting because when I dropped out, they were freaking out. I'm the oldest of three boys and I was always a good student. So they were very scared. Now it's funny because years later, now they brag about it, to family friends or at the country club or whatever. They're like, oh yeah, like Jake's out doing this, whatever. We got all that college money that we were going to support him with a little bit and help him through. And now he's doing this, and he moved out when he was 18, saving us some money. So that's always fascinating stuff, which I was fortunate enough to be in that position where my parents were going to support me through that. So yeah, I would say, the relationships there become interesting and it changes a little bit with family. With friends, that's probably the biggest one. My friends that I had in my fraternity and at KU, I rarely talk to now. And when I left and went all in on me, I probably could have done a better job of maintaining those relationships, but I really wanted to surround myself with a better network. And now it's funny because most of my friends are other young entrepreneurs, hustlers, our team members on the team, and other people doing great things because I want to be surrounded by that network. And so, I don't want to say you have to ditch your friends, but I think so many people, it kind of dates back to high school. So many people are friends with people just because they're around them. You happen to be put in the dorm room together your freshman year. You happen to be in the same fraternity or sorority. You happen to be in the same clubs or classes. You built a relationship. You happen to go to the same high school. And it's not to say that there's anything wrong with that because those are great relationships. But understand when you want to take things to the next level, you need to build a network of friends that is where you want to be. If you wouldn't trade a position with where your friends at, they shouldn't be in your close network of friends. And so far too many people, they want to change their life and do this incredible things, but they're not willing to change the environments around them. And that's the number one thing you have to do. You have to change the environment around you. And if that means getting rid of or distancing yourself from friends, then that's what it means. And it isn't that you give your friends the bird and say, you're holding me back, because that's not true. It's ultimately on you, but surround yourself with people that you want to be like and that inspire you to do better. I couldn't recommend that more. And don't just have friends because they're around you. You know what I mean? Like there needs to be a purpose for that relationship.
That is great advice for college students, right? Great advice to end on. So don't stitch out, you guys. I'm going to show the QR code that you've got to scan to get your points at the end of this. But just before we do that, Jake, what I tend to do at the end of every time we have someone come and speak to us is I get everyone to do a Twitter summary and throw it in the chat. So you guys, throw your Twitter summaries of today, throw it in the chat, because that's a great way of giving back to Jake and saying thank you to him, to show him what you got out of this talk today. So let's see them. Let's see the chat light up. What's your email? Oh, so Jake's on LinkedIn, by the way. So you can check out all his stuff on LinkedIn. So much great info and advice. Yeah. Thanks, Jake. So throw those. Oh.
I'm going to throw the promos to the LinkedIn, to the Instagram. I'm all over TikTok too. TikTok's my favorite. This was truly an honor. Thank you so much. And if anyone has any further questions or specific questions, get in touch with me. More than happy to answer. I'm not going to sell you a course or some consulting thing. Like I'm here to help you. And because I want to inspire and empower more individuals. And if anyone's interested in marketing or entrepreneurship or business or creating, also hit me up because we're going to be hiring very soon. So would love to do that. And thank you again for making this happen, and looking forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. Thank you. Thanks for giving us your time. And you can see in the chat there that you've definitely inspired a few. It might have been just the push they were needing to get started. So you guys, I'm going to share my screen right now for the QR code, and